This happened right after I'd bought a house with a garden. My husband and mother-in-law declared a forced cohabitation with smiles on their faces. Mom says they are moving in. After giving it a lot of thought, we decided to live together. Surely you won't oppose it, right? If you do, I'll make sure my son divorces you. What would your boss think? Here we go again. What an unfair tactic. If my mother-in-law joins, my sister-in-law will certainly come too. Imagining the ongoing harassment that would continue after we move in, I shivered. I absolutely cannot accept this. I have no intention of living together over there. What are you saying? You don't seem to understand your position. My mother-in-law frowned in anger and pulled out a divorce form already signed by my husband. Her face seemed to say that getting the house was all that mattered to her. The plan was proceeding horrifyingly smoothly. I struggled to hold back my laughter. My mother-in-law looked triumphant, watching me tremble with my head down. Quietly, I signed the divorce papers, packed my belongings, and left the unpleasant in-laws' house. On the day of the move, an urgent call came from my former mother-in-law. Have you realized it yet? She desperately wanted to meet and talk. That's exactly what I wanted, to meet and put an end to it myself. With a meticulous plan to control them, I set off to the battleground. My name is Amelia. I work as a secretary at an advertising agency. James, my husband, was introduced to me by a chief editor at a newspaper company. Being in a vulnerable position, I couldn't refuse the department head's proposal. At the age of 29, after half a year of dating, I gave in to James's persistence and married him. I regretted making the wrong decision at a critical moment and have continued to regret it. I think James's mother, Grace, intended to deceive me from the beginning. She appeared gentle and kind on the outside, but her attitude changed immediately after we got married. She dropped her facade of being an understanding elderly woman and revealed her true terrifying mother-in-law form. Hey, Amelia, what are you doing? I told you to do the dishes and then immediately start weeding the garden. Grace's irritating screams echoed in the house every day. I was sick and tired of it. Every day, sighing was all I could manage in response. After getting married, James strongly insisted, and I reluctantly accepted living at his parents' home. James's father had already passed away due to illness, and Grace had been suffering from a painful leg for many years. He pleaded with me that we couldn't leave his elderly mother alone in the old house. However, the situation turned out to be different than at first glance. Grace, who was supposed to be suffering from a painful leg, was walking around comfortably. It's my responsibility to discipline the bride, she declared, and treated me harshly every day. James's response was also problematic. Whenever I requested to live separately, he just avoided it with various excuses. He always listened to his mother and never tried to protect me from Grace's nagging. I'm sorry, my mother is really strict. Don't just stand there. Help me. I'm really struggling. Ever since getting married, I have been plagued by strong anxiety and depression. I found myself crying or suddenly feeling sick. When I consulted a doctor, I was diagnosed with adjustment disorder. Living in the in-laws' house had caused a detrimental effect, making me feel extremely uncomfortable. Ignoring my feelings, my mother-in-law still made harsh demands. You can't be lazy just because it's a holiday. Have you cleaned your room? Have you done the shopping yet? Check the sales before you go out. Just wait, please. Don't rush me. My head hurts. I'll do the cleaning and shopping later. Don't be spoiled. Do as you're told immediately. You're supposed to be a wife. No, a wife is not just a maid. I wanted to argue that most of the demands made by my mother-in-law were about maintaining the house, cleaning the gutter, cleaning the curtains, fixing the cracks in the pillars. The family home was very old and falling apart everywhere. The house creaked whenever the wind blew. Each time my mother-in-law would press my husband to build a new house. This house is rented. We're renting it cheaply from a friend. Don't you ever think about wanting to live freely in your own home, James? You must be thinking the same, right? I think so too, but it's impossible with my income. Owning our own home is a distant dream. My mother-in-law was frustrated with her incompetent son, so it was only natural that her anger was directed at me, his wife. Cooking, cleaning, weeding the garden, taking her to the doctor. I worked full-time and was exhausted, but my mother-in-law didn't care. It didn't surprise me that I developed an adjustment disorder. That's how I felt every day. 6 months after I started living with my in-laws, my already difficult life was further complicated by the return of my sister-in-law, Maya. She had gotten divorced and brought her child back with her. "I can't stand to see your face anymore," she was told, and it seemed she was kicked out. Yes, it was my fault. I neglected my own child and got involved with my husband's boss, she admitted. What on earth was she thinking? While I was shocked, Maya smirked, just like her mother. My sister-in-law's behavior was similar. She didn't know housework and even made me clean her room. It can't be helped, right? I'm raising a child. You wouldn't understand since you don't have kids, but it's much harder than it looks. So I'll need your support. Maya wasn't working. She just idled her days away. She even neglected looking after her child. She would just lazily sprawl on the sofa. Her behavior on weekends was especially awful. She would leave her young daughter with me and go out to play at the casino. Maya seemed to have problematic friends too. They would gather during the day and have drinking parties. I wish Maya would help even a little with the housework, but she did absolutely nothing. She was the type to do anything to get money for her fun. An incident occurred. Maya handed me a bag. Inside were her father's belongings, cufflinks, a ring, and an antique cider. "What am I supposed to do with these?" I asked. "Think about it for a bit. Sell these and make some money. But make sure to sell them for a high price, okay?" Maya instructed. These items were her deceased father's possessions and should have been treated as heirlooms. The fact that Maya was telling me to sell such items made me feel sad. The thought of her gambling with that money made my heart ache even more. I was strongly opposed, so I explained the situation to my husband and left everything up to him. After that, I don't know how he handled his father's heirlooms, and honestly, I don't even want to know. When Maya first came back, various problems occurred. My things started to go missing more frequently since she returned. During this period, I also discovered that my husband was having an affair. A friend of mine who works at a different advertising agency saw him downtown on a holiday, walking hand in hand with a flashy young woman. Hearing this, I was shaking with anger. I'm working all day, even on holidays, and you're out having fun with a young woman. I can't believe it. Are you having an affair? Who is she? Tell me the truth. No, it's not an affair. She's just a woman from a bar. What about that? A married man shouldn't be going to such places. Maya was laughing loudly while listening to our conversation. My mother-in-law looked surprised but didn't criticize my husband severely. Interview: the reason my husband went to such places was because I was lacking as a wife. It's embarrassing to make such a fuss about this. It's your fault. If you were more attentive to your husband, this wouldn't have happened. I can't agree with that, Grace. Isn't that a bit unreasonable? In this house, that's common sense. Going to bars or having affairs is like a part of a man's instinct. It's the wife's role to tolerate such things with an open mind. You're a bad daughter-in-law. What is considered common sense here seems to be nonsense there. Allowing him to go to bars is impossible. My stress kept increasing. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Determined to change this disgusting situation, I decided to take action. My mother and sister-in-law continued their usual behavior every day. They treated me like a maid. They lay around on the sofa or floor like slackers, and when hungry, they would yell loudly, "Why isn't lunch ready yet? It's already past noon. Can you please stop dawdling? You're so slow. It's annoying. Then why don't you handle it yourselves? I'm constantly busy with gardening, airing out the bedding, and shopping. I hardly have a moment to breathe. Stop that defiant attitude. You should know your place." It seemed I wasn't even allowed to express my opinion. Honestly, I was fed up. I wanted to move forward with a divorce as soon as possible, but things weren't that simple. The chief at the newspaper company, to whom I was indebted, had introduced me to my husband. My boss also asked me to maintain his good reputation. My mother-in-law knew this fact and often used it to her advantage, which was infuriating. I felt completely trapped day after day. I had to just sit still and bear with it. Then one day, my husband's affair became a clear reality. A colleague in the same industry had found solid evidence, which prepared me for the initial stages of my plan. Now it was time to think about the next step. About a month later, during dinner, my sister-in-law was browsing through a housing catalog. "Seems like you were planning to buy a house. Why did you go through my back? Why would you do such a thing? Calm down. It's a bit rural, but it looks like a lovely house. Amelia, please consider it with me before doing such things." The house I liked had a garden. As my mother-in-law said, it was in the countryside, but had a very nice exterior. In fact, I had already visited the site several times and met with their real estate agent. When I told them everything, the three of them became even more interested. "Really? You progressed that far already? Are you really going to buy it? It's good value for money and spacious. Not bad at all. James, you just need a bit of courage." "Really, but a house with a garden? I'm a bit hesitant." "If you become the head of the household, I'll support you. Don't you want to move out of here and just live with Amelia?" Before I could act, my mother-in-law had already persuaded my husband. What an evil way to put it, as if they had no intention of letting me go that easily. When the discussion about buying the house came up, I brought up the issue of ownership. "I will be the head of the house," my husband said. "The name on the deed will, of course, be mine. So is it okay to proceed with buying this house and starting a new life together?" "Yes, it's okay. I'll show what I'm made of. Let's buy that house and get the procedures done quickly," he declared. My mother and sister-in-law praised his decision, but I noticed something. The two of them exchanged glances and smirked. A few days later, right after I bought the house with the garden, my husband and mother-in-law declared their intention to cohabit with smiles on their faces. After giving it a lot of thought, we've decided to live together. Surely you won't oppose it, right? If you do, I'll make sure my son divorces you. What would your boss think? My mother-in-law said with a smug expression. Here we go again, I thought. What an unfair tactic. If my mother-in-law joined, my sister-in-law would certainly come too. Imagining the ongoing harassment that would continue after we moved in, I shivered. I absolutely cannot accept this. I have no intention of living together over there. What are you saying? You don't seem to understand your position, my mother-in-law said, frowning in anger. She then pulled out a divorce form already signed by my husband. Her face seemed to say that getting the house was all that mattered to her. If you hate it that much, then sign here, she said, pushing the form toward me. Okay, I'll sign. Let's get a divorce. I can't endure it anymore. Is that really okay with you, Amelia? Are you satisfied with this? James asked. Don't say anything more, I replied, trying to stay calm. Being with such a rude and incompetent woman is just frustrating. A young man like you can surely find a new wife soon. Those were very rude words. I quietly signed the divorce papers. My mother-in-law seemed satisfied with her victory, but she didn't understand my feelings at all. The plan was proceeding horrifyingly smoothly. I struggled to hold back my laughter. A few days after moving into my new apartment, there were constant calls from my former mother-in-law. Looking at the date, I could confirm that today was their moving day. Have you realized it yet? The nonstop ringtone was just like my former mother-in-law's persistence. No matter how much I ignored it, the calls didn't stop. Due to the persistent calls, I finally decided to answer the phone. Hello. I can't believe it. Why did you choose such a property? My former mother-in-law launched into her anger without any preamble. Hello, please calm down. What's wrong? Can you tell me what the issue is? There's no use pretending. The problem lies with this house. You knew this house was full of problems when you bought it, didn't you? Indeed, that's true. The house I chose does have defects. The ground is very weak and often sinks. Even though it's a new building, doors and sliding doors may fail to close within a few years. There are old coal mines in the vicinity, which are well known to cause problems. This fact is well known among the local residents. They have built their homes on safe, stable ground. Meanwhile, innocent new residents who are not aware of this information often run into trouble. This time I had used a problematic house to set a trap for them. I had a hard time finding an effective house at a reasonable price with the help of a real estate agent. Of course, I intentionally let my former sister-in-law steal the real estate catalog from my bag. I deliberately placed the bag in a spot where she would easily notice it, making it easy for her to sneak a look. Unaware, they fell into the trap and moved into their new home. It was hard to hold back my laughter when signing the divorce papers. I wanted to tell everything, but I couldn't. I pretended not to know. A defective house? That can't be right. You must be mistaken, I argued. What are you saying? It's so obvious. Anyway, come over here. No, I honestly don't want to see you anymore. I firmly refused. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law demanded. I no longer want to deal with a family that seems like monsters to me. I told them I would refuse no matter what amount they offered. Afterward, my former mother-in-law withdrew in despair, and my ex-husband came on the phone. Amelia, please listen. I just want you to understand our position a little. I'll return those words to you, James. Have you ever considered my feelings even a little? No, right? I've been lonely all this time. I'm sorry. I apologize. Where are you now? Can you tell me your new address? Why would I tell you? If by any chance you came to visit, I would have to move again. I want to cut off any relationship I have with you. The argument went nowhere. After a while, my former in-laws started making even more unreasonable claims. They insisted that the divorce was invalid and claimed we were still family. I had 2 colleagues at work witness and sign the divorce papers, which I submitted to City Hall. It was impossible for the divorce to be invalid. How lacking in understanding were they? Let's meet just once to talk. It's not getting resolved. Come on, I'm asking you, Amelia. Just once is fine. Let's settle things properly in person. Okay, my former mother-in-law and ex-husband were insistent on meeting up. Even if I refused, they would likely contact me again. If that's the case, I might as well meet them in person to resolve things. All right, I'll meet you just this once. Really? Thank you. I appreciate it. But I will decide the place and time of the meeting. Okay. Because there would be problems if they tried to ambush or follow me, I needed to leverage my position to avoid future troubles. Therefore, I carefully planned and called them to meet at a specific cafe. I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes late as scheduled. My former mother and sister-in-law, who had been kept waiting, were furious. My ex-husband just gave a smile. It was the reaction I had expected. How do you keep your elders waiting? That's very rude, my former mother-in-law said. I don't want to hear about common sense from you. What do you want? I'm so angry. You pushed this defective house on us, and it's been a hassle. You need to take responsibility. I've told you many times, I didn't know. It was you who chose to live there, wasn't it? My former mother-in-law was at a loss for words. It seemed she couldn't deny it. She and my former sister-in-law had decided to live in the defective house by themselves. It appeared that their previous residence was being renovated by the owner, and as a result, the only place they could live now was that defective house. If you're done, I have something to say. I'm going to file a lawsuit and claim damages against you. Prepare yourself. What damage? A lawsuit? Why would you do such a thing? I don't understand. What have I done to you? Be specific. You have mentally pushed me to the point where I developed an adjustment disorder. I then presented a copy. What are you saying? It's so obvious. Anyway, come over here. No, I honestly don't want to see you anymore. I firmly refused. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law demanded. I no longer want to deal with a family that seems like monsters to me. I told them I would refuse no matter what amount they offered. Afterward, my former mother-in-law withdrew in despair, and my ex-husband came on the phone. Amelia, please listen. I just want you to understand our position a little. I'll return those words to you, James. Have you ever considered my feelings even a little? No, right? I've been lonely all this time. I'm sorry. I apologize. Where are you now? Can you tell me your new address? Why would I tell you? If by any chance you came to visit, I would have to move again. I want to cut off any relationship I have with you. The argument went nowhere. After a while, my former in-laws started making even more unreasonable claims. They insisted that the divorce was invalid and claimed we were still family. I had 2 colleagues at work witness and sign the divorce papers, which I submitted to City Hall. It was impossible for the divorce to be invalid. How lacking in understanding were they? Let's meet just once to talk. It's not getting resolved. Come on, I'm asking you, Amelia. Just once is fine. Let's settle things properly in person. Okay, my former mother-in-law and ex-husband were insistent on meeting up. Even if I refused, they would likely contact me again. If that's the case, I might as well meet them in person to resolve things. All right, I'll meet you just this once. Really? Thank you. I appreciate it. But I will There was plenty of audio evidence. I've prepared a file of all the abusive words thrown at me by my former mother-in-law. These recordings would substantiate the charges of defamation and extortion. Did you think I would remain a victim forever? Not just my mother-in-law, but you too. You could be liable for these crimes. What? Why? What have I done? Think about your actions. Haven't you committed crimes? Can you say you haven't troubled me? That's not true. Stop making things up. My former sister-in-law claimed her innocence. I showed her the screen of my smartphone. Her face changed color instantly. The screen displayed a scene of her rummaging through my bag, clearly caught on video. She was searching through my bag while looking around cautiously. What is this? Why? How did you record this without me knowing? After you arrived, my belongings started disappearing frequently. Makeup, jewelry, clothes, bags. I became suspicious, so I installed a hidden camera. That's horrible. Why would you do something like that? A wife doesn't have the right to do that. You're surprised. You should really think about who's truly being presumptuous here. The legal penalty for theft is up to 10 years in prison or a fine of up to $3,300. I'll be reporting this to the police later. My former sister-in-law was at a loss for words, trying to find a retort but unable to speak. Her helplessness was evident. I had meticulously recorded details about everything I had lost. The extent of the damage was clear, so dealing with the police and lawyers would be straightforward. I was determined to address this thoroughly. I resolved never to forgive these 3 people. The last one remaining, my ex-husband, was visibly nervous. If I were to rank whom I could not forgive the most, it would be him. I believed that a husband and wife were supposed to support each other, but it seems he was different. James, weren't you? From the beginning to the end, you were my enemy, weren't you? An enemy? I never intended that. I never thought that way at all. Please believe me. I was just trying to make things right today. Yeah, enough with the lies. I don't need you to make things right. My ex-husband has always been a cowardly two-timing man, always trying to be on the stronger side. In the past, he was always with my former mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Nothing has changed. Even now, he's trying to appease me, hoping to escape the situation. If he had been a more decent person, we might still have been married. If he had proposed starting a new life, just the 2 of us, I might have accepted. Her name is Luna Jones. You're a fair partner, right? What? How do you know? I had someone investigate. A skilled friend of mine. I even have photos of you and Miss Jones entering a hotel. Look here. No, don't show me. Please don't. When I tried to show him the smartphone screen, my ex-husband quickly became agitated and tried to stop me. He was embarrassed by the revelation of his infidelity, though it should have been no big deal to him. When it came to morals and ethics, all 3 of them had already lost them. They were such a like-minded family. I put the smartphone and the copy of the diagnosis back in my bag. There was no more evidence to present. It seemed like my former mother-in-law, ex-husband, and former sister-in-law had already lost the will to resist. They were afraid of being reported to the police if they did anything wrong. They looked visibly frightened. But unfortunately for them, I was fully intent on consulting the police regardless of their actions. The police will probably visit you soon. It would be wise not to run away. Otherwise, your punishment might become even more severe. Also, make sure you never follow me again. Okay, Amelia, don't say such harsh things. Weren't we a couple just a while ago? Indeed, but honestly, I consider our marriage a failure. I feel relieved now that we're no longer married. If you try to follow me, be prepared because I'll sue you on that point too. Don't ambush me in front of the company. Don't contact me unless absolutely necessary. After making a few simple agreements with them, I left the cafe. After I left, they were still looking down. My ex-husband's divorce quickly became public knowledge at his company. The reason for the divorce, his affair and mistreatment of his wife, became widely known. As a result, my ex-husband was treated poorly at his workplace. The situation was brought about by a chief editor at a newspaper company we had dealings with. It didn't take long for my ex-husband to lose trust and receive harsh treatment at his job. Unable to withstand the pressure, he eventually resigned. His attempts to find new employment were unsuccessful, and his relationships with his family also deteriorated. About a year after our divorce, he appeared in front of me again. I was stopped by him on my way back home from work. When I turned around, there he was, looking disheveled. James, I didn't recognize you at first. I guess so. I've been told a lot recently that I look different. He clearly looked like he had been through a lot. No wonder my former mother-in-law and sister-in-law were convicted and fined. Additionally, the hidden camera footage I uploaded online unexpectedly became popular, making my former sister-in-law infamous. The video gained more traction than anticipated, and even her former friends began shunning her. Her notoriety severely hindered her job prospects. Eventually, I filed for alimony from my ex-husband. Now they are facing significant financial difficulties. They also need to pay the mortgage on the defective house, which undoubtedly puts them in a tough situation. How are your mother and Maya doing? They're alive but struggling. Both are working now, just to get by. They always say they wish they could go back to how things used to be, living off our income. Typical. They're like parasites. I'm glad I cut ties with them. I expected some objection from him, but there wasn't any. My ex-husband sighed deeply and apologized. I'm truly sorry for everything up till now. I'm reflecting on my actions. I was foolish, Amelia. You were right. I should have always been on your side. I think I must have been out of my mind. I always thought your family was the problem from the start. Don't be so cold. Please let's live together again. I'm planning to cut ties with that family for good. I'm serious. You're all I have. Is that so? Unfortunately, I'm already seeing someone else. There's no chance of us getting back together. And even if I were single, I wouldn't consider reconciling with you. When I made this clear, my ex-husband collapsed to his knees right then and there. However, I was not about to be fooled by an act meant to garner sympathy. If I were a harsher person, I might have spat at him right there. Instead, I left him where he was and continued on my way home. After that, there was no further contact from him. The person who informed me of this was the real estate agent who had helped me. I heard that the lives of my former mother-in-law, ex-husband, and former sister-in-law had become quite turbulent. The three of them blamed each other for their poverty, and their relationships gradually worsened. From their house, the sounds of arguments and breaking glass could be heard late into the night. They tormented each other, yet couldn't seem to separate, trapped in a miserable relationship. It was like a living hell. They became isolated in the community, with no one willing to interact with them. Eventually, they would likely sell their worthless house at a low price and end up burdened only with debt. I can vividly imagine them huddled together on cold nights, cursing each other. Someday, I'd like to see firsthand their pitiful state when they hit rock bottom. Meanwhile, I am incredibly happy these days. My past experiences have shaped who I am today. The existence of my new partner, whom I once mentioned to my ex-husband, has become a significant turning point in my life. He's a highly capable salesperson at a major corporation, respected by many for his work. He respects others, values and his calm, mature demeanor is well liked by many, including me. He is also divorced. We share a common past as divorcees and showed deep understanding for each other. We have decided to walk through life together and plan to have a modest but heartwarming wedding soon. My first marriage was filled with challenges and difficulties. Those experiences are still fresh in my memory, and sometimes just remembering the pain brings tears to my eyes. However, my current partner's gentle support quickly warms my heart again. I can't fully express how much his presence means to me. I feel like I have found the place I truly belong and have gained the sense of relief I had long been searching for. I am convinced that I reached this point by taking a detour and accumulating many experiences. Because of my painful past, I believe I can now be kinder and more compassionate towards others. These experiences motivate me to build a positive and bright future. I believe that every moment in life has value and lessons to be learned. Lately, this belief has strengthened, and I feel fulfilled every day. A new chapter in my life is beginning, and it is very bright and full of hope.